Professor Kylox's 3 eye stalks swiveled nervously as he adjusted his teaching membrane for the 100th time that morning. The advanced xenobiology lecture hall at Nexus Prime University buzzed with excited chatter from his students, eager to learn about the most terrifying creatures in the known galaxy. What they didn't know, and what made Kylox's gill slits flutter with anxiety, was that sitting in the back row, scribbling notes like any other student, he was one of those very monsters. Marcus Webb looked perfectly ordinary by human standards. Brown hair, brown eyes, average height, wearing a simple blue sweater and jeans. To the collection of aliens filling the amphitheater, he might as well have been a walking nightmare wrapped in deceptively soft flesh. But Marcus had worked very hard to blend in during his exchange semester, and so far, nobody suspected a thing. Settle down, settle down. Kylox's voice resonated through his throat sac, creating that peculiar warbling effect that always reminded Marcus of a broken accordion. Today we begin our unit on Category 7 extinction events, specifically focusing on the Terrans. A collective shudder rippled through the classroom. Tentacles curled, carapaces clicked, and several students' bioluminescent patches flickered with what Marcus had learned was the galactic equivalent of nervous laughter. Zara 9, a crystalline being from the Helix Nebula, raised one of her prismatic appendages. Professor, is it true that they actually consume other living creatures for sustenance? Kylox's eye stalks drooped. I'm afraid so, Zara 9, but that's just the beginning of their horror. He activated the holographic display, and suddenly the room was filled with images that made half the class recoil in terror. Marcus had to bite his lip to keep from laughing as a three-dimensional projection of a perfectly normal human appeared in the center of the room. To him, it looked like his neighbor Bob from back home. To his classmates, apparently it looked like the stuff of nightmares. Observe the predatory characteristics. Kylox continued, his voice taking on the dramatic tone of a nature documentary narrator. The forward-facing eyes, designed for tracking prey. The exposed calcium carbonate structures they call teeth, capable of crushing through bone and sinew. And notice how they walk upright on only 2 appendages, freeing their manipulator limbs for other purposes. Blix, a gelatinous student from Tau Ceti, gurgled anxiously. What kind of other purposes, Professor? Tool creation, weapon crafting, and recreational violence. Kylox paused for dramatic effect. You see, unlike civilized species who evolved past their aggressive tendencies, humans actively seek out conflict. They have created thousands of ways to harm each other, and they call it sports, Marcus snorted quietly. Wait until they heard about hockey. The hologram shifted to show various human activities. Rock climbing appeared first, causing several students to emit distress calls. Look at this behavior. Kylox's eye stalks were practically vibrating. They voluntarily scale vertical surfaces for no survival-related purpose whatsoever. Their primitive brains actually release pleasure chemicals when they place themselves in mortal danger. Next came footage of a marathon. The collective gasp from the classroom was audible. They run, Kylox whispered dramatically, for distances that would kill most sentient beings. Not to escape predators, not to catch prey, but for what they call fun. Their cardiovascular systems are so over-engineered that they can maintain this pace for hours without dying. Theo Bright, an insectoid from the outer rim, clicked his mandibles nervously. Professor, surely these are aberrant behaviors. Not all humans do these things. Oh, my naive student. Kylox's throat sac deflated sadly. These are considered normal recreational activities. Wait until you hear about their combat sports. The hologram changed again, this time showing boxing. The entire class went silent. They hit each other, Zara 9 whispered. Yes, on purpose. For entertainment, Kylox confirmed. They gather in large groups to watch 2 humans attempt to render each other unconscious using only their natural weapons. And the audience cheers. Marcus was struggling not to burst out laughing. The way Kylox described it made it sound like humans were some kind of bloodthirsty death cult, instead of just people who enjoyed competitive activities. Blix raised a gelatinous pseudopod. But Professor, How do they survive with such violent tendencies? Surely they must have destroyed themselves by now. Ah, excellent question. Kylox's eye stalks perked up. This brings us to their most terrifying characteristic of all, their adaptability. The hologram shifted to show humans in various environments: Arctic expeditions, desert crossings, deep-sea diving, spacewalks. Humans, Kylox intoned gravely, are the only known species to have successfully colonized every biome on their death world. Frozen wastelands that would instantly kill most of us, they call it camping. Deserts with temperatures exceeding the boiling point of most biological fluids, they built cities there. Ocean depths where the pressure would crush our exoskeletons, they go there for recreation. Marcus remembered his last vacation to Hawaii and had to cough to cover another laugh. But surely they use advanced technology for protection? Theo Bright asked hopefully. Sometimes, Kylox admitted, but often they deliberately choose not to. They have a concept called roughing it where they intentionally make survival more difficult. They will abandon their shelters, their climate control, even their communication devices, and venture into hostile environments with nothing but primitive tools. The class was looking increasingly horrified, and if they encountered dangerous fauna, Zara 9's prismatic form was flickering rapidly now. They eat it, Kylox said simply. The silence was deafening. I'm sorry, Professor, Blix gurgled weakly. Could you repeat that? They eat it, Kylox repeated. When humans encounter a dangerous predator, their first instinct is often to determine if it would make a good meal. They have consumed creatures that could easily kill them, and many of their cultural delicacies are specifically the most dangerous organisms from their world. Marcus thought about the lobster he'd had last weekend. Poor thing never stood a chance. Your Deathworld, Kylox continued, is populated by creatures that most civilized species would classify as walking nightmares. Arachnids the size of dinner plates, serpents that can unhinge their jaws to consume prey twice their diameter, massive predatory felines with retractable claws and bite forces that can crush skulls. The hologram showed various earth animals. A spider caused 3 students to faint. A snake made Blix actually lose cohesion for a moment. When a lion appeared, roaring silently in the projection, half the class dove under their desks. And humans, Kylox said with the dramatic timing of a seasoned performer, keep these creatures as pets. The collective wail of horror from the students was music to Marcus's ears. Pets? Theo Bright's voice was barely a whisper. They invite death into their homes? Not just invite, Kylox corrected. They bred some of these monsters to be even more efficient killers, then decided they were too cute to resist cuddling with. Marcus thought about his golden retriever back home and grinned. Max was indeed a certified killing machine, at least when it came to tennis balls and mailmen. But Professor, Zara 9 said, her crystalline structure now flickering in patterns that Marcus had learned indicated extreme distress. How do they sleep knowing such creatures are in their dwellings? That's the truly terrifying part. Kylox's voice dropped to a whisper. They sleep better because of it. Humans have such confidence in their ability to dominate other life forms that they find the presence of predators comforting. Marcus was really struggling now. The mental image of his classmates reacting to seeing someone walking a chihuahua was almost too much to handle. The hologram shifted again, this time showing human children playing. And now we come to perhaps the most disturbing aspect of human biology, Kylox announced. Their offspring. The class leaned forward despite their obvious terror. Human juveniles are born completely helpless, Kylox began. They cannot walk, cannot feed themselves, cannot even lift their own heads. By all logical standards, they should be easy prey for any predator. Nods of agreement rippled through the classroom. And however, Kylox continued, evolution has equipped human adults with such overwhelmingly protective instincts that threatening a human offspring is essentially a death sentence. Adult humans will fight creatures 10 times their size to protect their young. They will walk through fire, swim through acid, and face down military-grade weapons without hesitation. Marcus nodded approvingly. That sounded about right. But here's where it gets truly horrifying. Kylox's eye stalks were trembling now. Human children, despite being helpless, are naturally drawn to danger. They will attempt to pet venomous creatures, climb to lethal heights, and consume anything they can fit in their mouths. It's as if they're born with a complete absence of survival instinct. Blix made a sound like a deflating balloon. How does the species survive? Constant vigilance. Kylox replied grimly. Human adults spend years following their offspring around, preventing them from accidentally killing themselves. And somehow, through this process of repeatedly saving their children from self-inflicted doom, they raise the next generation of apex predators. Marcus remembered his nephew trying to pet a wasp last summer, and had to agree that human children were indeed spectacularly bad at staying alive on their own. Professor Theo Bright's mandibles were clicking rapidly. You mentioned that humans create weapons. Surely they can't be that advanced? Kylox's throat sac inflated to maximum size. Oh, my innocent student. Humans have created weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems. They have devices that can split atoms, bend space-time, and convert matter into pure energy. But do you know what their most feared weapon is? The class waited in terrified silence. Themselves, Marcus raised an eyebrow. That was actually pretty metal. You see, Kylox continued, when humans are deprived of proper weapons, they become more dangerous, not less. They will fashion deadly implements from whatever materials are available. Kitchen utensils, gardening tools, even furniture can become instruments of destruction in human hands. The hologram showed various improvised weapons throughout human history. The class looked like they were about to collectively pass out. They have a saying, Kylox whispered, the human is the weapon. Everything else is just a tool. Marcus thought that was actually a pretty cool philosophy. But Professor Zara 9 managed to ask through her flickering distress patterns, surely such violent creatures cannot form complex societies? Actually. Yeah. Kylox's voice took on an almost admiring tone. Their societies are more complex than ours, despite their violent nature, or perhaps because of it. Humans have developed intricate social structures based on cooperation and mutual protection. They understand that working together makes them even more dangerous. The silence in the room was absolute. They form what they call families, Kylox continued, groups of humans who will defend each other to the death. These family units band together to form communities, which combine to form nations. And when their world is threatened, these nations, despite their differences, will unite to face any external threat. Marcus felt a surge of pride. Humanity did have its moments. In fact, Kylox added, there are reports that when humans encounter other species in distress, they often risk their own lives to provide assistance. They seem to have an inexplicable compulsion to protect not just their own kind, but any creature they perceive as needing help. Blix gurgled thoughtfully. That doesn't sound so terrifying. Ah, but that's the trap. Kylox's eye stalks snapped to attention. Their compassion makes them even more dangerous. A human who believes you need protection becomes an unstoppable force. They will move mountains, drain oceans, and fight impossible odds to keep you safe. And heaven help anyone who threatens something a human has decided to protect. Marcus grinned. Yeah, that sounded like humanity all right. The professor activated another hologram, this one showing human space exploration. Which brings us to why we're studying them now. Kylox's voice became grave. Humans have begun expanding beyond their death world. They've established colonies, built space stations, and their ships have been spotted in 17 different star systems. A wave of panic swept through the classroom. Are they invading? Theo Bright asked, his voice barely audible. That's the terrifying part, Kylox replied. We don't know. Their behavior patterns are completely unpredictable. They might arrive to offer assistance, engage in peaceful trade, or, he paused dramatically, they might decide your planet would make an excellent vacation destination. Marcus burst out laughing. The entire classroom fell silent and slowly turned to look at him. 30 pairs of alien eyes, eye stalks, and optical sensors focused on the human who had just revealed himself through his very human reaction to the absurdity of the situation. Kylox's 3 eye stalks went rigid with terror. Time seemed to freeze in the lecture hall. Professor Kylox's eye stalks remained locked onto Marcus like heat-seeking missiles, while the rest of the class began to slowly process what had just happened. The human exchange student they'd been sitting next to for 3 months had just laughed at the idea of his own species being vacation planners from hell. Marcus realized his mistake immediately but decided to lean into it. After all, the cat was out of the bag, and knowing his classmates' opinion of Earth fauna, they'd probably consider that a literal death threat. "Oh, come on," Marcus said, standing up and stretching with casual ease that made several students whimper. "Vacation destination? Really? You should see what we consider relaxing." Blix's gelatinous form was vibrating so hard he looked like green jello in an earthquake. You're human." "Yeah," Marcus confirmed cheerfully. "Marcus Webb, exchange student from Earth. Nice to finally meet you all properly." The collective intake of breath from 30 different respiratory systems created a sound like a broken air conditioning unit having an existential crisis. Professor Kylox's throat sac had deflated completely. But you've been attending my xenobiology classes for 3 months. You've been taking notes on your own species." Marcus shrugged, a gesture that sent ripples of terror through the class as they interpreted it as some kind of aggressive display. "Your perspective is fascinating, honestly. You make us sound way cooler than we actually are." "Cooler?" Zara 9's crystalline form was flickering so rapidly she looked like a disco ball having a seizure. "You call mass extinction events cool?" "Yes." "Well, no," Marcus admitted. "But the way Professor Kylox describes a simple camping trip makes it sound like we're conquering death itself just to roast marshmallows." "Marshmallows?" Theo Bright's mandibles clicked frantically. "What innocent creatures have you named after warfare?" Marcus paused, realizing he'd just accidentally terrified them further. No, marshmallows are just, look. They're fluffy white things made of sugar. We put them on sticks and hold them over fire until they're golden brown." The silence that followed was deafening. "You burn your food," Kylox whispered, "before consuming it." "Well, yeah, cooking is pretty standard," Marcus said, then immediately regretted it as half the class dove under their desks. "Guys, seriously, it's not that scary. Cooking kills bacteria and makes things taste better." "Taste better?" Blix's voice reached frequencies that shouldn't have been possible for a liquid being. "You modify the chemical composition of organic matter to enhance the pleasure you derive from destroying it." Marcus blinked. "I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds kind of metal, but really it's just..." "Metal?" Zara 9 interrupted, her panic causing her to emit a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. "You incorporate metallic elements into your consumption rituals." "No, metal means cool." "Awesome. Impressive," Marcus explained, then watched in fascination as this somehow made things worse. "Look, you're all getting worked up over nothing. Humans aren't nearly as scary as Professor Kylox makes us sound." "Not as scary?" Kylox's eye stalks shot up like periscopes. "Young human, you just described turning other life forms into entertainment and then consuming them after subjecting them to thermal torture." Marcus sat back down, mostly because his standing seemed to be causing some students to hyperventilate. "Okay, let me try to explain this differently. Yes, humans eat meat. Yes, we cook it. But we also eat plants, we have art, we make music, we tell stories. We're not just mindless killing machines." "Stories?" Theo Bright ventured hopefully. "You mean historical records of your conquests?" "Some of them, sure, but mostly we make up fictional tales for entertainment," Marcus said. "Adventure stories. Romances, comedies, mysteries." "Comedies," Blix repeated slowly. "You find humor in the suffering of others?" Marcus face palmed, which caused 3 more students to faint as they interpreted the gesture as him striking himself in preparation for combat. "No, comedy is when we laugh at silly situations, misunderstandings, people slipping on banana peels. Actually, forget the banana peel thing. You'll just focus on the fact that we laugh at people falling down." But it was too late. The damage was done. "They laugh," Zara 9 whispered to her neighbor, "at the misfortune of others." "Professor," a voice called from the back of the room. It was Vex 12, a synthetic being who'd been quiet throughout the entire lecture. "If I may make an observation?" Kylox's eye stalk swiveled toward the artificial student. Please, Vex 12. Any insight would be appreciated. The human has been attending classes for 3 months without incident, Vex 12 stated in their characteristically logical tone. During this time, he has not consumed any classmates, initiated combat, or attempted to claim territory. His behavior has been consistently non-threatening. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude toward the synthetic student. Exactly. See? I'm perfectly harmless. Harmless? Kylox's voice cracked. You just admitted to thermal torture of organic matter. It's called grilling. And it's actually quite relaxing, Marcus protested. We usually do it while socializing with friends and family. It's a bonding activity. Bonding, Theo Bright repeated. You form social connections through shared violence. Marcus threw his hands up in exasperation, which caused a minor stampede as students interpreted it as an aggressive display. You know what, fine. Let me show you something. He pulled out his phone, which immediately caused half the class to dive for cover as they assumed it was some kind of weapon. It's just a communication device, Marcus said patiently. Look, these are pictures from my last family barbecue. He held up the phone, showing a photo of his extended family gathered around a picnic table, laughing and eating. His nephew was covered in ketchup, his sister was making bunny ears behind their dad's head, and his dog was attempting to steal hamburgers from unattended plates. The class stared in stunned silence. That's your pack? Blix asked weakly. My family, yeah, Marcus confirmed. See, we're just normal people having a good time. The small human, Zara 9 pointed at Marcus's nephew in the photo. It's covered in a red substance. Ketchup, Marcus explained. It's a condiment made from tomatoes. He's a messy eater. Tomatoes, Kylox repeated slowly. Those are the acidic fruits from your Deathworld that can dissolve organic tissue. Marcus stared at him. What? No, tomatoes are they're barely acidic. You can eat them raw. Raw? The collective scream from the class was loud enough to trigger the building's emergency systems. Okay, bad choice of words, Marcus said quickly, waving his hands in what he hoped was a calming gesture but probably looked like some kind of martial arts routine to his terrified audience. Vex 12 stood up, their mechanical form somehow managing to look thoughtful. Professor, I believe we may be experiencing a translation and cultural interpretation error. How so? Kylox asked, though his eye stalks never left Marcus. Consider this, Vex 12 continued. The human has described behaviors that, while unusual, are presented in the context of social bonding, family relationships, and recreational activities. Perhaps what we perceive as violent or dangerous is simply different from our own cultural norms. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. Yes, exactly. Look, different species probably have different ideas about what's normal, right? But you consume other living creatures. Theo Bright protested weakly, and you photosynthesize directly from your star's radiation. Marcus pointed out, that would kill me instantly. But I don't think you're scary for doing it. This seemed to give the class pause. Furthermore, Vex 12 added, the human's presence in our educational institution suggests that his species values learning and cultural exchange. These are hardly the priorities of a purely destructive force. Plus, Marcus added, gaining confidence, I've been here for 3 months, and the most dangerous thing I've done is accidentally break the coffee machine in the student lounge. Coffee machine? Blix gurgled with renewed terror. Marcus mentally kicked himself. It's a device that makes a caffeinated beverage. I was trying to fix it when it stopped working properly. You consume stimulants, Kylox said flatly. Well, yeah, coffee helps us stay awake and alert, Marcus admitted. Lots of species use caffeine. And when the device malfunctioned, your first instinct was to dismantle it, Zara 9 observed. Marcus was beginning to see how every innocent human behavior could be twisted into something sinister. I was trying to repair it so other students could use it too. So you modified alien technology to make it functional for your needs, Theo Bright summarized. Marcus paused. Actually, that does sound kind of concerning when you put it like that. X12 interjected again. However, the human's stated motivation was to benefit other students, not to gain tactical advantage or assert dominance. Exactly, Marcus said gratefully. I just wanted people to have coffee. People, Kylox repeated slowly. You refer to non-human entities as people, Marcus blinked. Well, yeah, you're all sentient beings with thoughts and feelings and personalities. What else would I call you? The silence that followed was different from the terrified quiet that had dominated the class. This was thoughtful, contemplative. You consider us equivalent to your own species? Vex 12 asked. Vast, in terms of deserving respect and basic rights? Absolutely, Marcus said. I mean, you're obviously different from humans in a lot of ways, but that doesn't make you less valuable or important. Blix's gelatinous form had stopped vibrating. But we're not apex predators from a death world. So? Being an apex predator doesn't make you morally superior, Marcus replied. If anything, it probably makes you more responsible for looking out for everyone else. Professor Kylox's eye stalks slowly lowered as he seemed to process this. You believe that strength creates obligation rather than privilege? Well, yeah, Marcus said, as if it was obvious. If you have the power to help people, you should use it to help people. That's pretty basic ethics. The class exchanged glances, or whatever the equivalent was for species with various numbers and configurations of visual organs. This is... Zara 9's flickering had slowed to a gentle pulse. This is not what we expected from a death world predator. Maybe that's because your expectations were based on incomplete information, Marcus suggested gently. I mean, no offense, Professor, but your lecture made us sound like we eat babies for breakfast, do you not? Kylox asked weakly. No, we eat cereal for breakfast, or eggs, or toast, or fruit. Or Marcus stopped as he realized he was about to trigger another panic about thermal modification of organic compounds. Look, the point is, humans aren't the monsters you think we are. But your species does engage in warfare, Theo Bright pointed out. Marcus sighed. Yeah, sometimes. Usually when diplomacy fails or when we're defending ourselves or others, it's not our first choice. And most of us would prefer to avoid it entirely. Most of us. Blix caught the qualifier. Well, there are always some individuals in any species who are more aggressive than others, Marcus admitted, but they're not representative of humanity as a whole. Vex 12 nodded their mechanical head. This suggests a complex social structure with varying behavioral patterns among individuals, rather than a monolithic aggressive species. Exactly, Marcus agreed. We're individuals, just like all of you. Some humans are artists, some are scientists, some are teachers, some are doctors who spend their lives helping others. Helping others, Kylox repeated slowly. Even non-humans? Especially non-humans, sometimes, Marcus said. We have entire organizations dedicated to protecting endangered species, preserving habitats, and studying other forms of life. The transformation in the classroom was gradual but noticeable. Students were no longer cowering under their desks. Conversations began to spring up as they processed this new information. So when humans expand to other worlds, Zara 9 asked carefully, they're not necessarily conquering them. More like exploring, learning, maybe finding new places to live if the locals are okay with it, Marcus explained. Most humans are actually pretty excited about the possibility of meeting other intelligent species. Excited? Theo Bright's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Not aggressive or territorial? Well, some might be nervous or cautious, but mostly excited, Marcus confirmed. We've been wondering if we were alone in the universe for thousands of years, finding out we're not as like. It's the most amazing discovery in our entire history. Professor Kylox finally relaxed his eye stalks completely. Mr. Webb, I believe I owe you and your species an apology. Our intelligence gathering may have been somewhat sensationalized. Marcus laughed. And this time nobody fainted, just a little. Though I have to admit, some of your descriptions made us sound pretty badass. Badass? Blix asked. Cool, impressive, formidable in a good way, Marcus explained. Ah, said Vex 12. A positive interpretation of characteristics that could be viewed negatively. Exactly, Marcus grinned. It's all about perspective. As the class period ended and students began filing out, Marcus noticed they were no longer giving him a wide berth. A few even nodded politely as they passed. Zara 9 approached his desk hesitantly. "Mr. Webb, would you perhaps be willing to give a guest lecture next week about human culture from a human perspective?" Marcus smiled. "I'd be honored to. Just maybe warn everyone that I'll be bringing some human food to share, for cultural exchange." Zara 9's crystalline form flickered with what Marcus had learned was excitement rather than terror. "What kind of food?" "I was thinking chocolate chip cookies," Marcus said. "They're sweet. They're baked rather than grilled. And they're pretty universally loved by humans." "Chocolate," Zara 9 repeated slowly. "Is that the psychoactive compound from your Deathworld plants?" Marcus paused, then grinned. "You know what? On second thought, maybe I'll just bring some fruit." As the last student left the lecture hall, Professor Kylox approached Marcus's desk. "Mr. Webb, I must ask, if humans are as peaceful as you claim, why do you have such extensive knowledge of combat and survival techniques?" Marcus considered this seriously. "Same reason you study xenobiology, Professor. Knowledge is useful, even if you hope you'll never need it. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." Kylox nodded slowly. "A remarkably practical philosophy. Plus," Marcus added with a grin, "some of that stuff really is just fun. You should try rock climbing sometime." "Professor, the view from the top is incredible." Kylox's eye stalks recoiled in horror. "Absolutely not." "Bene," Marcus laughed as he packed up his notes. Tomorrow's guest lecture was going to be interesting. He just hoped he could convince them that Moras were a bonding activity, not a religious sacrifice involving controlled combustion. After all, he still had a lot of misconceptions to clear up. But for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime University, Marcus felt like he might actually make some real friends among the stars, even if they did think his species was completely insane.